Welcome back to CIA Declassified. We are stepping back into the early 2010s. This is the era of the big data explosion and the transition to the cloud. Governments and corporations were moving their most sensitive secrets onto server stacks, trusting in a new generation of sophisticated security software to keep the hackers at bay. They relied on integrity checks, automated guards that verify every piece of code before it runs. If the guard says the code is clean, the system lets it in. But what if you could whisper to the guard? What if you could convince the guard that the intruder is actually the landlord? This was the chilling premise of shattered assurance. It wasn't just an invention. It was an exploit designed by the agency to systematically bypass the self-defense mechanisms of enterprise-level security suites. It targeted the kernel, the core of the operating system, to ensure that the agency's presence was not just hidden, but authorized by the system itself. How did this digital skeleton key get its name? The reason for the designation shattered assurance is a play on the industry term information assurance. In the cybersecurity world, assurance is the measure of confidence that a system will operate as intended and is free of vulnerabilities. By naming the exploit shattered assurance, the agency was literally describing the effect of the tool, the total destruction of a server's ability to trust its own security protocols. It was a blunt internal acknowledgement that once this exploit was deployed, the target's assurance was nothing more than a memory. The reality of shattered assurance is a masterclass in silent infiltration. Let's examine the facts and the cold logic of the developers. Shattered assurance was a component of the broader brutal kangaroo project suite. A quote from a Declassified technical manual: the goal is to move from detect and defend to reside and rule without the system ever firing an alert. End quote. Records prove the exploit targeted the kernel mode code signing process. The agency utilized zero-day vulnerabilities in popular security software to plant the initial exploit. A quote from a Declassified project report: if you control the integrity check, you control reality for the entire server. End quote. Documentation confirms the exploit was designed to automate the infection of USB drives once a single internet-connected device was compromised. The agency created ghost processes that were invisible to standard task managers but had full administrative privileges. A quote from a Declassified operational log: we don't break the encryption, we just wait at the finish line for the server to decrypt it for us. End quote. Records show that shattered assurance replaced earlier agency tools known as Easy Cheese and Emotional Simian. Logs prove the agency could remotely update the exploit to adapt to new security patches in real time. The exploit relied on a secondary tool named Drifting Deadline to bridge the gap to air-gapped networks. A quote from a Declassified analyst paper: the most secure server in the world is the one that thinks it's perfectly safe while we're reading its mail. End quote. The exploit resided in the BIOS and or UEFI of some targets, making it persistent even after a hard drive wipe. A quote from a Declassified technical brief: persistence is the only metric that matters in the long game. End quote. Shattered assurance utilized a component called broken promise to evaluate harvested data before exfiltration. A quote from a Declassified developer report in a 2014 briefing: the target's own defensive software becomes our primary delivery vehicle. End quote. Logs show the exploit was tested extensively on Windows 7 and Windows 8 architectures. The agency maintained a shadow command and control server specifically for managing shattered assurance nodes on closed networks. A quote from a Declassified memo: we are effectively the antivirus now. End quote. Records prove the exploit could survive Patch Tuesday updates by mimicking the behavior of authorized system drivers. The agency utilized a technique called DLL hijacking to maintain its foothold. A quote from a declassified field report: "The system believes we belong there because we are using its own credentials." End quote. Records indicate that the CIA shared these methodologies with the Five Eyes intelligence partners. Shattered assurance allowed for the silent execution of arbitrary files on the target machine. A quote from a declassified 2015 strategy paper: "Our footprint is zero because we use the target's existing footprint." End quote. Documentation shows the exploit could detect and avoid specific antivirus vendors to prevent discovery. The agency maintained a massive library of off-the-shelf hacking techniques to misdirect forensic investigators. A quote from a declassified internal memo: "If they find us, they should think it was a teenager in a basement, not a state actor." End quote. Records prove the CIA utilized a tool called Lachessis, Lachessis, to trigger the exploit via auto-run functionality. The DDP leveraged Riverjack to exploit library MS functionality and later versions of the tool. Logs indicate the agency could self-destruct the exploit remotely if detection was imminent. A quote from a declassified brief: "The ghost leaves no trail when it chooses to vanish." End quote. The CIA established a dedicated embedded development branch to maintain the shattered assurance code base. Documentation reveals the exploit was capable of jumping from a single infected laptop to an entire server farm within hours. The agency purchased exploit kits from the dark web to reverse engineer them for shattered assurance integration. Logs show that the tool could modify the system event log in real time to erase its own entry point. A quote from a declassified internal training slide: "Control is not about being seen, it's about being the only thing the computer hears." End quote. Records prove the agency simulated hardware failures to force targets to reboot, triggering the exploit's persistence mechanism. The DDP utilized a digital fingerprint library to ensure the exploit's traffic looked identical to routine administrative tasks. Documentation proves the CIA utilized bespoke encryption wrappers to hide the payload from signature-based scanners. The agency coordinated with the NSA to ensure shattered assurance did not conflict with other state-sponsored beacons. A quote from a declassified operative's field notes: "We aren't just in the room, we are the oxygen the room breathes." End quote. Despite the declassification of the exploit's existence, the how and the who remain shrouded. The heaviest redactions in the shattered assurance files are found in the supply chain infiltration logs. Over 450 pages are blacked out regarding the specific private sector partners who may have inadvertently or intentionally included hooks for the exploit in their commercial software. The official reason cited is Exemption B4, Trade Secrets, alleging that revealing these details would cause irreparable harm to the competitive standing of American tech companies. Then there's the insider consensus theory. Some whispers in the dark suggest those redacted pages hide the names of major security software vendors who were legally compelled to provide a master key to the agency. This theory suggests that shattered assurance wasn't a hack at all, but a backdoor by design that was coded into the software before it ever reached the customer. The redactions in this view protect a massive breach of trust between the tech industry and the public, where the guards were actually agency employees in corporate suits. Then there's the Silicon Valley stakeholder conspiracy. It's a bit more aggressive, and it posits that the redactions cover a shadow equity program. Speculators believe the agency funded the startup phase of several major security firms in exchange for the ability to deploy shattered assurance at will. The blacked out pages are allegedly the shareholder agreements that link the intelligence community to the boardrooms of the world's most trusted tech giants, making every update a potential Trojan horse. Then there's the autonomous AI speculation. It's a persistent rumor that the exploit eventually evolved. Speculators believe the redactions detail a version of shattered assurance that utilized early machine learning to rewrite its own code every time it was scanned. The theory is that the agency lost control of a self-replicating version of the exploit that is still circulating in global networks today, hiding in the noise of the internet like a digital virus with no off switch. Then there's the quantum bypass legacy. It's a high-tech theory which suggests the redactions hide the bridge to quantum computing. It is speculated that shattered assurance was the first testbed for algorithms designed to crack post-quantum encryption before it was even standardized. According to this theory, the blacked-out pages contain the mathematical proofs that prove modern encryption is already obsolete, and the agency is simply waiting for the right moment to turn the key. And lastly, there is the mind-machine interface exploit theory. It's a bit unsettling. Speculators suggest the kernel in the title doesn't just refer to software. Some theorists believe the redacted files discuss the use of shattered assurance to interface with neural implants or biological computer components. In this speculative scenario, the exploit wasn't just bypassing server security, but was a prototype for bypassing the integrity checks of the human brain's own neural architecture. Was shattered assurance a success? Tactically, it was a technical masterpiece. It allowed for the unhindered monitoring of high-value targets for years without detection. Strategically, it was the ultimate intelligence enabler. It turned the world's move to the cloud into a gold mine for the agency. Ultimately, it was a success because it allowed for the absolute certainty of data integrity from the agency's perspective. The success is further evident in the fact that many of the servers compromised by this tool remained active for over a decade before the exploit was even suspected. It successfully bridged the gap between external attacks and system-integrated espionage. The project succeeded in rendering traditional air-gapped security models obsolete by targeting the maintenance tools used to bridge those gaps. It was a success because it didn't just steal data, it stole the concept of a secure perimeter. The operation proved that as long as humans write code, the agency can find a way to make that code lie. The CIA successfully integrated the tool into a global infrastructure, making it a standard issue weapon for digital dominance. It allowed the agency to maintain a God view of international communications without the need for physical taps. This success ensured that even as technology evolved, the agency's backdoor remained wide open and completely invisible to the targets. It stood as a pillar of invisible influence that redefined the rules of 21st century power. As far as operational and technological breakthroughs go, shattered assurance resulted in breakthroughs that define modern cyber intelligence, like kernel-level rootkit persistence, the ability to hide malicious code within the core of an operating system. Today, this is used in endpoint detection and response technologies to hunt for advanced persistent threats by looking for the same artifacts the agency once created. Digital certificate subversion, techniques for manipulating the trust chain of software validation. This paved the way for modern code signing security protocols that use blockchain or hardware security modules to prevent unauthorized code execution. Supply chain integrity mapping, the operational method of identifying every hand that touches a piece of software from development to deployment. This is the foundation of modern software bill of materials requirements used to secure government networks, and automated vulnerability exploitation engines, systems that can automatically identify and exploit flaws in a target's configuration. This technology is used today in breach and attack simulation tools to help companies test their own defenses against agency-level threats. Shattered assurance reminds us that in the digital age, assurance is a fragile thing. The project proved that the more complex a system becomes, the easier it is to hide in the gears. We are still living in the world of the ghost in the kernel, where the software meant to protect you might be the very thing opening the door. The grandmasters of the digital frontier taught us that trust is the ultimate vulnerability. Their legacy is the constant, silent battle for the root of our machines, a war that is fought in the milliseconds between a command being sent and a command being executed. Every time your computer asks for permission to run an update, it is a reminder of the assurance that was shattered long ago. The ghosts haven't left the machine, they've just become part of the architecture. And the silent flicker of your server's lights, the echoes of this exploit still resonate, proving that once trust is broken at the kernel level, it can never truly be rebuilt. We have traded security for convenience, and the price of that trade is a window that we can never truly close. The watchers are built into the walls of the digital house we all inhabit. Thanks for listening. Stay paranoid, and remember, if you didn't write the code, you don't own the machine. Join us next time as we examine J.G. Payne. In the strategic harbors of the East, the agency didn't just watch ships, they monitored the rising tide of revolution. We'll uncover the facts behind J.G. Payne, the intelligence gathering program focused on political unrest in specific Asian port cities. It was a war of tides and turmoil. Join us next time for the Harbor Watch. In the meantime, I'll see you in the archives.